On my way home from work, my cell phone rang. I answered it to hear the police informing me that my husband had been injured in a fire. My husband had mentioned a work meeting that day, so I was shocked. Was the fire at our house? I rushed home to find our home intact. A huge relief. With no time to relax, I quickly called a friend to watch my kids and headed to the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, my husband was asleep in his room, though I knew he had been hurt in the fire. His burns didn't look too severe. The room had 2 beds. The other one had its curtain drawn. The doctor explained that while my husband had some burns, they should heal within a few weeks. The more serious issue was a broken spine from jumping out of a 3rd-floor window to escape the fire, which could have long-term effects. As I was returning to my husband's room after the doctor's explanation, a nurse stopped me to apologize for placing my husband in a room with a female patient. When I inquired about the woman, I learned she was also a victim of the same fire and had been admitted to the hospital at the same time. Where did the fire occur? I asked. Since it's work-related, I can't disclose that information. Just go home and bring me a change of clothes. Why should I do that? Why? It's normal for a wife to care for her hospitalized husband. I don't see it that way. You usually ignore me and the kids when we're sick, so don't expect me to take care of you. That's an unreasonable excuse. Just then, the door to the hospital room opened, and someone I recognized walked in. I was confused as the curtain around the other bed was drawn back. When I saw the person lying there, I was left speechless. My name is Amy. I'm 30 years old and have a family of 4, my husband and our 2 sons, ages 3 and 5. I've been working at the company I joined when I was 22. My husband used to work in IT but quit about a year ago, claiming he wanted to adapt to a more modern work style. He made this decision without consulting me, leading to a heated argument. He insisted that freelancing would increase our income. Despite my concerns about not discussing it with the family, after quitting, he began working from home, but things quickly went downhill. He started sleeping in until noon and spent late nights gaming in his office. Whenever I asked about his work, he would say, "I have a duty of confidentiality, so I can't discuss it," and never provided a clear answer. Initially, my husband's income was $2,000 a month, but it steadily dropped. Over the past 6 months, it had dwindled to around $500 a month. Despite being home all the time, he didn't contribute to housework or childcare. When the kids caught a cold, he would avoid them, saying, "I can't afford to get sick too," and would leave for days. When I fell ill and asked him to look after our son while I went to the hospital, he would respond with, "Why don't you just take the kids and go to the hospital," and lock himself in his workroom. With no income, no help around the house, and a lack of concern for his family, my frustration grew. I contemplated divorce, feeling overburdened and disheartened by his lack of parenting. However, my busy schedule made it difficult to progress with divorce preparations, adding to my daily frustration. During this period, my husband, who rarely left the house, began running errands frequently and kept his cell phone glued to him. I suspected he might be having an affair. While I would have been devastated by his infidelity in the past, this time I saw it as an opportunity to leverage in the divorce proceedings. I tried to gather evidence but struggled to access his cell phone as he was always carrying it. I considered hiring a private investigator, but with my income being the sole support for our family, my savings were minimal. The stress of trying to catch him in his affair mounted daily, and then a turning point came. One evening, as I was heading home from work, the police called to inform me that my husband had been injured in a fire. My husband had mentioned a meeting that day, so I was relieved to find our house safe upon my arrival. With no time to waste, I quickly arranged for a friend to look after my sons and rushed to the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, my husband was asleep in his room. Though I had heard about the fire, his burns seemed minor. The room had 2 beds, with the curtain drawn around the other. As I stood there, a nurse informed me that the attending physician would explain things soon, so I left the room. The doctor explained that while my husband's burns would heal in a few weeks, the more serious issue was a fractured spine from jumping out of a 3rd-floor window to escape the fire, which could have long-term effects. The thought crossed my mind that I should have finalized the divorce sooner. I felt insensitive but struggled to imagine caring for him under these circumstances. As I returned to the room, the nurse apologized for the room arrangement, revealing that the woman in the other bed had also been in the fire and had been admitted simultaneously. Could this woman be my husband's affair partner? I wondered as I re-entered the room to find my husband awake. Where did the fire occur? I can't disclose that, it's work-related. Seeing my husband's hesitation, I was convinced he had been with his affair partner when the fire happened. Anyway, go home and bring me some clothes. Why should I? Why? You're my wife. It's expected that you take care of your hospitalized husband. I don't see it that way. You never help when the kids or I are sick, so don't expect me to take care of you now. That's a poor excuse. As my husband spoke, the door to the room opened, and Mr. Smith, a friend of mine, walked in. I was puzzled to see someone I knew. Mr. Smith bowed and pulled back the curtain on the adjacent bed. To my shock, Mrs. Smith, my close friend, was lying there. I turned to my husband, who had gone pale and avoided my gaze. Ah, I see. It was clear that Mrs. Smith was my husband's affair partner, and I was at a loss for words. Mrs. Smith was someone I had introduced to my husband, and she had even brought her child to our home. I had confided in her about my husband's recent indifference and my suspicions of his infidelity. I couldn't help but wonder about Mrs. Smith's intentions as she listened to my story with a serious expression, nodding in agreement. Was she trying to gauge how much I knew about the affair? I fought the urge to confront both her and my husband immediately and decided to address Mr. Smith instead. You're Mr. Smith, right? Your wife has always been very supportive of me. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a bit disoriented. I heard that your husband and my wife were in the same fire. He won't tell me where it happened. Do you know anything about it? Mr. Smith glanced at my husband before responding. I'm sorry your husband was involved. The fire happened at my house. At your house? I wasn't aware my husband was visiting you. When I looked back at my husband, he was hiding under the covers. Excuse me, but I have something I'd like to discuss. Do you have some time? Yes, I do. I had a good idea of what Mr. Smith wanted to discuss. We moved to a nearby diner, where he revealed that he had suspected his wife of cheating for several months and had been collecting evidence. He had found a photo on her phone showing her with another man and had recently hired a private investigator to obtain concrete evidence of the affair. I shared that I had also suspected my husband of infidelity but didn't know who the other person was. When I mentioned my intention to divorce him, Mr. Smith offered to help, and we discussed our plans for the future. 2 days later, Mr. Smith and I visited the hospital together. My husband and Mrs. Smith were still sharing a room. When they saw us, their expressions grew tense. I'm glad to see you're both doing well. I came by the other day but couldn't talk to you since you were resting. How are your injuries? I fractured my shoulder, so I'll need some time to recover. That sounds rough. With your current situation, I hope you heal quickly. Yes, and our child is still young. Right, you'll need to consider child support, so it's best to recover soon and start looking for work. Mrs. Smith looked confused, clearly not understanding the implications of our conversation. Hey, stop talking and just give me my clothes. I didn't bring any. I told you before that I'm done taking care of you. What? What I brought today isn't clothes, it's these. I pulled the divorce papers out of my bag and placed them in front of my husband. Divorce papers? Are you really trying to leave me now because of my injuries? This isn't about your injuries. You mentioned a business meeting the day you were admitted, so why were you at Mrs. Smith's house? Oh, I didn't mention it, but Mrs. Smith is a business associate. We were discussing work at her house when the fire happened. Do you think that excuse will work? I know about your affair with Mrs. Smith. Your excuses are just pathetic. My husband's expression soured as he defensively responded. Stop making a fuss over a small affair. What will you do after the divorce? Can you really handle raising our 2 kids alone? Of course I can. I've been managing them on my own for quite some time. You've barely taken care of them. I've only played with them occasionally. And neighborhood fathers are more involved than you. Well, managing on just one income will be challenging. We've relied on 2 incomes until now. Do you want our kids to live in hardship? It'll be fine. Without your expenses, our lives might actually improve. But you're leaving me while I'm injured. If people find out you abandoned a husband needing rehab, it'll damage your reputation. It would be better to finalize the divorce after I've recovered, since you tend to give up on things halfway through. I can't wait until you're fully recovered. You have your lover to look after, don't you? At this, my husband glanced at Mrs. Smith and seemed to reluctantly accept the situation. If you insist, fine, I don't need you anymore, a coward who serves divorce papers to an injured person. I'll divorce you now. Hand over the papers. As he reached for the papers, I pulled them out of reach. Not so fast. What do you mean? You want a divorce, don't you? We haven't discussed alimony or child support. You're trying to avoid paying for hospital bills and rehab. Oh, right. Well, you'd better start your rehab quickly and earn money to pay alimony. You don't have any savings, do you? Excuse me, no savings. Mrs. Smith looked surprised by my words, and my husband shot me a serious glare. You said you had 4-digit savings. You claimed freelancing was profitable. I meant I could easily save 4 digits, but I'm spending it as soon as it comes in. I can save up money quickly, though. My husband tried to make excuses. Despite his current income being only about $500 a month, I stayed quiet, not wanting to argue further. With the divorce agreed upon, I outlined our next steps to my husband and Mrs. Smith. I mentioned that we had selected a lawyer to handle the compensation for the affair and that they would receive a certified letter from the lawyer soon. Then, we left the hospital room. When I returned home, I began preparing for the move. While my husband was still in the hospital, I visited the friend who had taken care of our children the day he was rushed to the emergency room, bringing her a box of chocolates as a thank you. I informed her that my husband was stable after the fire at Mrs. Smith's house and was not in any immediate danger. I also shared that I planned to divorce him and move due to his infidelity. Although I didn't explicitly mention Mrs. Smith as his affair partner, my friend seemed to grasp the situation. I had intended to make it clear, and given that several people were already aware of the fire's connection to my husband, the news would likely spread regardless. As we had planned, I consulted a lawyer about the divorce, but we faced challenges in settling on the compensation and child support amounts. Initially, my husband boasted, "I'm a freelancer, so I can work from bed even if I'm injured. I might even earn over $100,000 a year. Even if I become rich, I won't take you back." I had hoped his arrogance would lead him to pay the required compensation and child support, but his unrealistic income expectations quickly crumbled. He became increasingly reluctant to pay, asking for extensions and reductions, and eventually called me directly to plead his case. $20,000 in compensation is excessive. My infidelity is partly because you were always too busy. Isn't $5,000 more reasonable? It's not that I can't make money. My clients stopped hiring me because I missed a deadline by a few days. It's not my fault. I can't pay the full amount. If you really want the money, talk to those clients. I told him firmly, discuss it with the lawyer, and hung up. Subsequently, I had the lawyer inform my husband that if negotiations dragged on, we would proceed with mediation. My husband agreed to our terms, and from there, everything proceeded smoothly. We received a lump sum payment for compensation and child support, and the divorce was finalized. The Smiths also divorced, with Mr. Smith gaining custody of their children. During the affair, Mrs. Smith had left their eldest son, who was 10, to care for his younger siblings while she went out. After moving closer to my parents, I heard from a friend that my ex-husband and Mrs. Smith had remarried. They continued to live in the house where the fire occurred. My ex-husband, now using a cane, and Mrs. Smith, with her perpetually disheveled hair and gloomy demeanor, looked like an elderly couple despite being in their 30s. My ex-husband had accumulated over $100,000 in debt due to alimony and child support, while Mrs. Smith, a stay-at-home mom, was also responsible for child support for all 3 children. Together, they were burdened with significant debt. I didn't feel sorry for them, especially since I had reduced the amount I initially claimed in exchange for a lump sum payment. I knew my ex-husband continued to blame others for his troubles, just as he always had. I felt a sense of relief finally being free of him, though I felt some guilt over how suddenly my sons had been separated from their father and friends. Initially, my sons were disoriented in our new environment, but they quickly made friends with the neighborhood kids and began enjoying their weekends. My parents visit regularly, spending time with my sons and giving me some much-needed personal time. Since my husband left, I have more time, money, and peace of mind, allowing me to give my sons even more love and attention than before.